Josh O'Connor. So much for being here tonight. It was very, very important for us to come. It's not easy because there's a real pandemic. But I really, really appreciate you coming and being here in communion with us tonight. Filmmaking and cinema is a collective experience. The movie is about collective experiences and individual ones. And I really hope you enjoy it as much as we enjoyed making it, writing it, filming it, acting in it, right, Josh? Thank you. He's a great actor. Thank you so much.
And please wait till the end because we will be back for a Q&A. Enjoy the film. How does interpreting a fictional character? Yeah. Can you talk about what it was like to interpret this fictional character throughout the movie? Some of your process to create this character.
Yeah, I suppose pretty much the same as anything else really. In terms of the fictional, I mean it's all. I guess that I've only really ever played one person who is like a real person. And even then, that's sort of, it's totally fictional anyway. So with this, it was pretty much the same approach, actually. I think with this, we looked at I create like scrapbooks of images and words that have helped me, and we had so much material because the novel is so rich with language. So I took some stuff from there, and then there was one image which Eva and I looked at a lot, which was a photograph of John Grant. Is that right? It is John Grant, isn't it? From the Bloomsbury set, which is a collective of artists in the sort of early 20th century. And there was this very kind of sort of ghostly figure of Duncan Grant, that's it. John Grant's someone else, another artist who's brilliant. Duncan Grant. And Duncan Grant's sort of looking down, and it's a black and white image, and it's ghostly, it's very sad. And I always kind of went back to that because I guess in kind of understanding Paul's guilt, like a sort of survivor guilt, kind of the responsibility of holding up, not just the responsibilities of his family and his neighbourhood, but also the responsibilities of, in some ways, an entire generation of young men. This image seemed to kind of capture it, so that was something I kept going back to. I don't know if that answered your question.
That's great. Thank you. Yeah, go ahead here as well.
Okay, for me, I really love Odessa Young. She was amazing as Jane. I just want to ask, what was the process like finding your Jane?
Oh yes, how did you find your Jane? How did you find Odessa Young to play her?
It was not a straight road, but it definitely led us to Odessa, and when I got to see her performance in Shirley next to Elizabeth Moss, I was before watching the film, I was like, ooh, that's going to be a dangerous one because Elizabeth Moss is such a force of nature. And Odessa was just like right up there with her, and I was like, that's Jane. She's got the charisma, the strength, the vulnerability. And, we met over Zoom, and it just seemed so natural, and we just started talking about grammar. I was like, yes, makes sense. So I don't know, it's just, I feel extremely lucky in terms of cast, because all of them just made sense. It made sense to them, to us, all of us. There was nothing that was unnatural about the whole process, and believe me, it's not like that always.
We have a question here towards the back. Go ahead.
Yeah, my question is, I love the film and I really love the music in the film. Could you talk a little bit about your use of music and how you wanted to score? Because it seemed very much a character in the film.
So the questions about the music in the film and how the score was created, and it's very much a character in the film?
Yeah, sorry, I'm looking to the side to see if the composer is there, because she's... Just come here. Just come here. Come here. Go, baby.
Well, I think we struggled a little bit at the beginning, actually, trying to find, I think, what the tone was. And, you know, the film skirts 3 different times, and we wanted to do justice to the script and also try to keep it modern and, I don't know, kind of timeless. So it's anachronistic and timeless at the same time. That was the mandate, which is really easy.
I mean, there are several things that I'd like to add to that. First of all, Morgan and I, we've known each other for 20 years, and that plays a big part in what you hear, because there is trust that we have in each other that's quite uncommon, and also the possibility to fail and to get lost and to get back on track. And that's very, very rare in the process. And you know, she's right, the mandate was quite impossible. And we just kept on pushing, and Liz also has an amazing ear. And you know, sometimes we would get lost in the way, and she'd be like, just, you know, keep that in mind, that, and I was like, okay. And Morgan was like, okay, all right, you're right, you're right. So it's very much a synergy of people just, you know, trusting the process of that specific movie, and the movie giving us a lot. And thank you for the question, because I'm very proud, and you know, Morgan traveled here, and I'm just very proud that she's brought on stage. So thank you.
Thank you. We have a question right here. Go ahead. Yes. Right, so the questions, it's a magnificent film, and the questions around the significance of the horse.
It's pretty. I'm half joking. I don't know, you know, it's got a significance in the novel to start with. It just so happens it's very cinematic, you know, it runs, it shines, it's strong, it's got great hair, you know, there's just like many angles to it, and I don't think I try to not overanalyze. I have a very classical academic background, but when I'm making something, I like to go with where it brings me and just follow that. And the horse was one of those things, you know, we had a horse and we tried to film it, and we had 2 images that we could use, and they're in the film.
I think that also one of the things that's very interesting to me about this story is the unintended consequence of loss. And as Josh had said, a whole generation was wiped out in the First World War. And what he tells the story of is the family, which was typical of an upper middle class family in England, bought a racehorse, and that was the family racehorse, and it was a sort of trophy racehorse, and sometimes they went to watch it run, and they each owned a piece of it. And really, in some ways for me, it symbolizes what happened when that generation was wiped out, is the structures of the class system in England started to crumble, and the unintended consequence for Jane was that she moved from servitude into a space of education and learning and creativity and independence, which never would have been granted to her previously. And so when you come to the end, she says, actually that 4th leg was mine, and a piece of that ownership and possession was hers. And it's the sort of, this terrible tragedy, which we see throughout history as moments of real tragedy. I think especially for women, there's a kind of freeing because structures are broken down. I mean, not that you want the tragedy of loss like that, but it's a kind of, that's life, is out of horror and tragedy can come, you know, new life and new forms and new shapes, and somehow, without being too metaphoric, I think that horse fandango signifies some of that, or symbolizes, not signifies, some of that. If that makes sense.
Yes, it does. Thank you. We have a question over there. Go ahead.
Josh, it's been a real pleasure seeing your arc from the Durrell, which I loved, and Crown, which I know everyone here loved, and seeing this, and we all know this is fantastic. How are you, like, what are your plans for the next step, your next goal, your next step in your career? It's been so interesting over the last several years.
So the questions about Josh's career and next moves. Yeah.
Obviously, I can't tell you any of them. But yeah, there's pretty much playing Americans for the next year. So if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Yeah. So.
Thank you.
You play is a good thing.
Yeah, there you go.
It's the best.
We have a question at the back here. Go ahead.
So, for each one of you, do you have a favorite moment and why in a film? Because of challenging or something that might have possibly gone over our heads that you wanted to share with us?
Yeah, favorite moments in the film, or just momentous moments, I guess, for all of you.
I mean, there's so many that I love, but I think the temporal fluidity that the film exhibits in its structure, which is challenging, but also just fascinating. And I love when Jane travels back to the house with Mr. Niven, and you've got that fantastic score of Morgan's, and there's the overhead shot in the car. And then we, with her, she is reliving her day in a completely different context. And of course, he doesn't know that she's been there. The maid doesn't know that she's been there. And we hear the maid narrate the story. Well, the pie was eaten, and I sense, you know, the window was still open. And of course, we, with Jane, have a whole other level of knowledge, layer of knowledge of what happened in that day. And I love that layering in the film, and that playing with time and playing with story and playing with emotion.
I have a favourite moment, which is Patsy Ferran is one of my favourite actresses, and she's completely brilliant, and she is the maid at the she's the maid at the
She's Millie.
at the Nivens, right?
Yeah, the one that...
Millie, yeah, anyway, she's brilliant. And there's this little moment where they pass the church, and the Odessa cycles, Jane cycles off, and Millie has to chase after, and it's so funny. I'm just a big Patsy Ferran fan. Yeah.
God, I've got quite a few. One of them is when Paul undresses Jane, because if you pay attention, you never see her fully naked in that scene. And yet, you know, like, you can sort of breathe the desire that they have for each other. And I wanted to be in Jane's space, you know, I just wanted to feel what she felt and how she remembered it. And for me, it didn't have to do much with, like, her naked body, but more with how she felt. And I think he's hilarious, you know, with the whole metaphors and the bike ride. I just love it. And there's another moment that, as a director, I had a lot of fun building, which is, it's not fun, it's just a lot of pleasure, like deep pleasure. It's the montage towards the end, when you go through her head and, like, her memories, and you weave in and out of, like, the memories. And finding that rhythm was such a joy with the editor. So, yeah, also Glenda Jackson, because we struggled a lot with that scene for some reason that I won't get into. But anyway, and at the end we found it, and it was just such a joy to have Glenda be like so cutting and you know, this queen, this force of nature. She just really, you know, showed up. I love that.
We have time for one more question, and I see a couple. Okay, I'm going to go to the front first. Go ahead. I'll do two. Go ahead. Yeah. So the use of close-ups in the film, if you can talk a little bit about it.
I guess something I'm sensitive to personally. I don't really try to rationalize these things too much, because then yeah, you can justify anything in filmmaking, really. You know, believe me. So I guess it has to do with the sensuality and like how close you feel. I try to stay true to the emotional distance, basically. And when I feel we need to be close to the characters and we need that moment of intimacy with them. And that film is a lot about intimacy and vulnerability, and it seemed appropriate to use that 75mm lens. That's the closest one. Plus, you know, they both looked absolutely gorgeous on it. You're so handsome.
Nothing said.
It's a line from the movie.
Thank you. We have the last question. Go ahead at the back.
But I really love this sequence where she kind of walks into the house after Josh's character leaves, and she kind of takes ownership of the house, it feels like. And to me, it's such a beautifully crafted scene, especially again with the music added in, but as well the set of all the kind of jungle paintings on the wall. And then I spoke a bit earlier about how kind of a woman that I think it's really interesting, really great to take ownership of their lives and take yourself from being naked all the way to being a writer.
Okay.
Oh no, we can't.
Yeah, because like that's quite cryptic.
Yeah.
Because of the volume.
Yeah, we can't hear you. Is it possible that...
Can you try to reform it a little bit louder and shorter?
And shorter. Yeah.
That was good luck.
Sorry.
So I love the sequence particularly where Jane is walking through the house and she's taking ownership and goes into the pie and
Yeah.
through into the office. And I'm wondering, as it's how you capture that scene, also thinking of how to show that she's taking ownership not only of the house, but then later on to like...
I love that scene too. Like she has real agency in that scene when Jane is going through and she's eating the pie and she's like exploring the house, and how you crafted that scene.
You know what? Thank you for bringing that up, because actually that's the scene that made me understand I wanted to make the film. When I read the novel, I was like, this is such an iconic moment, because it's an image that, as a woman, I've never seen. You know, like a naked woman who's not at her place, like literally, socially, and in terms of gender. And yet, you know, she stands and she owns the place, because why not? And it's all natural and just completely makes sense to her. And so the first thing that I thought was very important was to find the right house, because it needed to give her that space. And when we found that house, you know, it just took us quite a lot of time to find the right pace. And you know, I didn't want people to get, I didn't want it to be about the boobs, you know, because on top of it, we know that, you know, it moves on the screen, so your eye tends to go, you know. So when she walks and you see her from here, like, you usually don't see the boobs. And when you're from behind, you just tend to forget that she's naked, and I just wanted to get there. And once she arrives in front of the books, she's literally staring at, you know, thousands of years of patriarchy. It's all male names, and she's going to be on a shelf later on, but as a writer, not just as a woman, you know, she could be put in that category. because it's so natural for her, and I thought it was very moving to be directing that. I'm moved, sorry.
Thank you for that. On behalf of all of us here in Toronto, thank you for coming and sharing your film with us. It's been
Thank you for
wonderful.
being here. It's a joy to be here.